All right, so I want to make a video about the rule of thirds. And this rule of thirds video can be interpreted in, it doesn't have to be thirds, it could be fourths, it could be sevenths. I've heard this in many different ways. And essentially, the point of the story is everything you do is literally in your mind, right? Your mind is what allows you to do whatever you want to do, and at the same time, it's what holds you back. And this rule of thirds is actually very important. So I want to share a very interesting story about myself when I was young that like I just recently figured out what was going on, right? So I biked across the country, was pretty fit, pretty strong on a bicycle. And I was going to a bicycle race with a friend of mine who was also a runner. So he was a cyclist and a runner, mountain biker. And he was doing the Philly Marathon in 2 weeks. So this was a weekend race, and he was doing the Philly Marathon literally in 2 weeks. And he's like razzing me the whole time. He's like, Jan, why don't you go do it with me? This, I'm like, what are you crazy? Like, I never ran more than 2 miles my entire life. And, I was in my young mid 20s at the time. I don't recall how old I was. I'd say probably 24, maybe, you know. And anyway, so he's like constantly razzing me, you can do it, you biked all the way across the country, all this nonsense. And eventually, like he did what I needed because, I said yes. I said yes, I was gonna do it. And the minute I said yes, it's the words have power, right? So the minute I said yes, my mind changed instead of saying that I can't do this to let's just find a way to get this thing done. Mind you, the marathon's in 2 weeks, and I actually don't think I even ran more than a mile and a half, if that, my entire life. You know what I mean? And I have to find a way to do 26.2. Point two is a big deal at that point. So that's lesson number one. It's like words have power. The minute I said yes, I'm very thankful for that opportunity that he encouraged me and kept egging me on until I actually said yes. But when I said yes, that's when everything changed. And that's where this rule of thirds comes in. So I didn't know how to train. I didn't know, I mean, you can look, but first of all, this was like so long ago. This is like 25 plus years ago. There was no real internet. Okay, there was an internet, but it was like nothing. there was no Google at that time. Um, my recollection definitely was no Google. And so you couldn't just figure out how do you train. But more importantly, even today, I think if you do a search on Google or any other search engine, how do I prepare for a marathon with 2 weeks of total training? you're gonna be out of luck. There's not gonna be anything written on this. It's just ridiculous, right? No one would actually. It's so risky. I don't think anybody would want to put anything out there to encourage anybody to do that, right? So I was on my own. There was no Google, no search stuff. And if you looked in a magazine Running World, it was like they give you like a 365-day plan during a marathon. I'm like, I have 14 days, man. 365, but I did have some fitness. And I want everybody to understand here that bicycle fitness and running fitness is different. We work on different leg muscles. So it's not easy. Just trust me, it's really not. You don't go from one to the other. At least you don't go from cycling to running. I think you could probably go from running to cycling a lot easier, to be honest, but I'm not sure about that. I'm not a runner. So anyway, so I'm like, I don't know how to do this, right? So I go to the track at Temple University. I'm a graduate student, and I'm like, hey, let's just see what happens. And I did 5 miles, my first try, and I'm like, wow, that's unbelievable. I'm so excited. And you have to say, like, some guy's going to run a marathon in 2 weeks, and they get all excited about a 5 mile run. They have to be like some kind of knucklehead, right? But I was excited. I was really excited. And then, a little bit later, I did 7.5 miles, which is really great. I mean, I was like, wow, I've never even gotten close to this kind of mileage in my life. This is wow. And yeah, it's really funny. And then a bit later, I went for a 10-mile run, right? I did it. I was like, this is unbelievable. I'm like, I actually ran 10 miles. I never ran even close. And, and then I was going to go for the big one. But it was getting close to the marathon time. This is the week before the marathon. And I don't remember the day, but I went for a 15-mile run. And I just was not feeling it. It wasn't happening. It was too much of a struggle. It was crazy. It wasn't right. You know what I mean? It just wasn't right. And I don't know what I did, maybe, a couple miles or something. And I bailed out of that run. I just knew it was not happening. I didn't feel good. Everything wasn't in sync. And I'm glad I did bail out of that, because if I did that run, I would have been sore and I would have never recovered for the marathon. I just know I would have never recovered. So I'm thankful that I didn't finish that run. So at least the one thing I had going for me the day of the marathon is I was fresh. And a friend of mine told me, it's like, on any given day, you could run 3 times as far as you can on an average day. Remember that. And it got me pondering, are you trying to say that I can run is 10 miles 3 times my average run day? Or, is 10 miles now my average run day and I can run 30 miles? And nobody knew, we just knew the statement. We didn't interpret the statement properly. And actually, I'll share the more proper interpretation of the statement, because now I know how to interpret it. And also, let me get into a different marathon. I actually ran the Bahamas Marathon. I had to be, so that was my early mid-20s. And then it was like my mid-30s, maybe later 30s, I ran the Bahamas Marathon. And it was completely different because I put on 40 pounds, and I wasn't fat. I just got big, it was like really big. I just worked out differently. And so running when you're like 162 pounds, honestly, it's kind of easy. When you're 205 pounds, it's different. I was the biggest guy to run the marathon in the Bahamas, and it's hot. And it was really funny because, for the Bahamas Marathon, it's like usual. I didn't train at all. Like, I was pretty fit cycling wise, and I kind of ran a marathon. I was like, I can do this, no big deal. And then, I had a few little training runs, really little, but then I had one massive training run, just huge. I took my 2 kids. They were sleeping in the stroller, and I was just running around. And I was flying. I remember I was like so fast, running so good, and going for so long. I don't even know how far I ran, but it was really far. Like my neighbors, because I was going around the neighborhood so many times in Sandyport, and my neighbors are like, man, that guy's for real. You know what I mean? And it was funny because I was pretty big at that time. And that was, about a week before the marathon. It was a massive run. It had to be more than 10 miles. Don't know how much further, but maybe not much more than 10 miles. And the morning of the marathon, like, I was just sore ever since that run, so I couldn't train again. It was just because I was so big, and I kept wanting to train, couldn't train. Running wise, just sore. And then the morning of the marathon, I woke up. I was sore. I was like, oh crap. I woke up and my legs were so sore. I'm like, dude, this is ridiculous. You can't run a marathon in the Bahamas, 26.2 miles, and start out sore. And I'm thinking, I probably can't do it. But then I'm like, you know what? You never know. Let's just get started, and after a couple miles, we'll see what happens. I got started. I remember, like, I kind of blew up over the Paradise Island Bridge, which is like 2 miles. I was finished. I stuck with it. I did it. I actually finished that marathon as well. Barely. I have to say barely, literally. It was so hot, it was so dangerous, and I was hallucinating towards the end. But I learned that every time, like if I was hallucinating, first I would drink, get hydrated, and then eventually I'd really hallucinate, and that's because I needed pee, and then I pee and I stop hallucinating, because like your pee is toxic inside your body. I learned, and when you're really weak, then you notice. So anyway, So there are two instances of going way beyond any normal realm of what humans would do. And this is where the rule of thirds comes in. The statement of the rule of thirds is that when you're done, you're finished, you can't do any more, and you're ready to give up, and you're just, see ya, I'm out of here. You're actually not done. You're only a third done. Okay, that's the statement. You're only a third done, and you still have 2/3 in the tank. And just so everybody understands, this rule of thirds is not really a rule of thirds. It could be, rule of fourths or rule of sevenths, stuff like I've heard others. But the point being, when you're ready to give up, you just got started, essentially. And the only thing that is making you give up is your mind. That's it. Because when you change your mind and you just say, I got this, I'm gonna do this, and your body will find a way. It's beautiful. God made you awesome to do whatever you need to do and then some, right? Like, when you're ready to give up, you got like way more to go. Please understand that the recovery time from these things was tremendous, okay? We all know. It took me a long time to recover from both of these marathons, but I did them, and I couldn't believe that I did. Literally, I couldn't believe it was. So, rule of thirds is there. When you're ready to give up, use your words. That's the key. You have to say, I'm going to do this, because words have power. When you just think it's in the mind, other thoughts get in your mind. But when you say it, just say, that's when the rule of thirds applies. When somebody else tells you and you say yes, it happens. It's magic. I hope y'all got something out of this. I definitely learned a lot, about this stuff from others, and also for myself. And I hope everybody uses this wisely. It's kind of cool stuff. All right, thank you very much for watching.